All right, should be recording now. So today we have Joe Schmid of the Majesty of Reason joining us. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your content?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. Yeah, like you said, I'm Joe. I do both popular and scholarly level work in philosophy. So on the popular level, I've got my YouTube channel, The Majesty of Reason, as well as a blog by the same name, and a book by the same name as well. So that's on Amazon, The Majesty of Reason, a short guide to critical thinking in philosophy. I was forgetting the name, but I remembered it now. So yeah, people could check that out. And then on the scholarly level, I write papers and books and whatnot and submit them to journals. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely link, in the description to your content and all that kind of stuff. And so, like I did with my interview with Dr. Josh, I want to go ahead and kind of peel back your story a little bit before we start talking about philosophy and all this stuff. So, what was your background and upbringing like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty conservative Catholic Christian home. I went to private school, Catholic school for K through 12, which is a long time. And so, yeah, very formative, very devout. I know other people say devote, but that sounds Canadian to me, so I'm not going to say it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you had Randall Rouser on, and he's like, about the tone.
Yeah.
But let's see. But yeah, so I grew up Christian, Catholic, and I, fully believed it. I prayed and everything, and felt that I had a relationship with God and so on. So yeah, that's K through 8, and I remember because it's private school, so we didn't really have buses. You had to do carpool and whatnot. So my dad was able to drive me and so on, and he was listening to Catholic radio all the time. So and that's kind of like apologetics. So people would call in with objections either to God's existence or to certain aspects of the Catholic faith and so on, and I'd hear the professional apologists, as it were, respond to that. So I don't know, I kind of grew up in this environment where there's a lot of critical thinking about the faith and just sort of defense of the faith and so on. And, I have theology classes every single day pretty much for this K through 8, indeed K through 12. I grew up very Catholic. And then let's see, around 7th or 8th grade, I think it was 7th grade, we started learning about evolution, and I was just captivated by it. I loved it. I thought it was so fascinating. I remember just looking at my hand and I was like, oh my goodness, this is formed by hundreds of millions of years of natural selection. And I just thought it was so fascinating. So I started delving into all that. And, Catholics, I should say, are super open to science, which is wonderful. Right. So yeah, our Catholic school was perfectly fine with teaching evolution. I remember in our class, we even had an assignment where the whole class watched the debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye. And we had to write an essay on it. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to write an essay on it. We were talking about it in class. It was so fun. And it was just so awesome. So it was a really good experience. And so anyway, I was just captivated by evolution. So I started reading a bunch of different books on evolution. I remember I'm not the biggest fan of Richard Dawkins, but his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, is really good. So I remember reading that. It's about the evidence for evolution and so on. Highly recommend that to people. And yeah, I just started digging into this. And of course, that raises questions about the relationship between the Bible and Christianity. And so I started getting into that kind of literature. And so this is 7th, 8th grade. I'm starting to look into Adam and Eve and so on. I found Biologos Institute.
Right.
And what's his name? Francis Collins, the former CDC director. He might even be the present CDC director. I'm not sure. But he has a book called The Language of God. And I remember reading that in 8th grade. And I really loved it. And that kind of kickstarted the whole process. So I firmly held to evolution. I firmly held that was perfectly compatible with Catholicism, Christianity, the Bible, and so on. But then around 9th grade, so this is getting into high school, I started reflecting on some of the horrors of the evolutionary process and just the profound languishing and suffering and death and predation and parasitism and carnivory that's kind of an engine of the process. I don't know, it seemed as though the very means by which God brought about the stuff around us, the very mechanism of creation was suffering and death and blood. And I don't know, it was so hard for me to see how this could be the providential working of an omnibenevolent being. it seemed to magnify the problem of evil. And so that kind of really got me starting to question. So, I started looking into like atheist-theist debates. I started listening to things on YouTube, debating my classmate, the people at the lunch table. And, it was just a kind of gradual process. And, at some point you blur into agnosticism. And then at some point you blur from agnosticism into, I went to metaphysical naturalism probably around 10th grade or so.
Okay.
So at the beginning of 9th grade, it was probably a year-long, maybe a year and a half. I don't know. It's the sort of gradual losing of the faith and so on, just dwindling confidence. And it all kind of kickstarted with the evolutionary argument from evil. And so, yeah, then around 10th grade, I started getting into like metaphysical naturalism, and I started getting into like Jeff Lauder and Paul Draper. And I started reading Draper stuff and like Jeff Lauder. Yeah. And so I kind of got on that train, and I was kind of like a hardcore metaphysical naturalist around 10th grade or so. And then, so that lasted a while. But then in junior year, I started losing my faith again in metaphysical naturalism, as it were, because I started reading Josh Rasmussen and Alex Proust and these other sorts of thinkers. And they kind of started chipping away at my metaphysical naturalism. And I started to see how complex these issues were. And that kind of led me to agnosticism a lot, especially their book, Necessary Existence, as well as a lot of other things, kind of pushed me towards agnosticism. Reading Proust's book, The Principle of Sufficient Reason, a Reassessment. That took me more towards agnosticism. And then that kind of persisted until the present day. So yeah, around 11th grade, probably nearing towards the middle or end of 11th grade. That's when I started, really starting to shifting towards agnosticism. And and then it's been the same ever since. And of course, I've been, shifting confidence on different arguments and, finding this argument more persuasive or this other argument more persuasive at different times. So it's all kind of constantly shifting and so on as I research further and so on. Yeah,
that's interesting. I was going to ask, like, how you're, because as I was an agnostic for a couple of years before I would consider myself a tentative atheist. So I was wondering, like, how your leanings back and forth are going, and is it just different arguments leaning back and forth? Some days you wake up and you're like, maybe theism. Some days you wake up, maybe atheism. Or is it more like, I don't know, or just like 50-50? Like, how do you conceive of your agnosticism?
So in the present, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's certainly not wavery like that. It's pretty stable. Just because I've looked, as you know, I've looked into these things like really extensively, and so I do have pretty settled views on most of the arguments. Some of them I'm like actively toying with. Like Benedetti paradoxes, I'm still like actively toying with, looking at different avenues and. But yeah, so I never like wake up one day and think one of them is more plausible than the other, at least nowadays. But it's roughly, I don't know. It's just, I say that the reasons favoring each side are roughly counterbalanced in my mind. But that's just a really rough sketch. It's not as though it's perfect 50-50. I don't think I can even assign a precise probability to each worldview like naturalism and theism. It's just, I think that there is significant reason favoring both sides, and it's exceedingly difficult to privilege one side over the other, given my current epistemic status. So I guess that's really how it is.
Now you just got to take Pascal's wager, man.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Roughly counterbalance. You just got to take the wager.
What makes that so difficult is like, okay, I might be able to see how someone, because there are a bunch of different kinds of agnostic, but like one kind of agnostic is just that they don't see reason on either side. And that's why they have a roughly counterbalanced scale. Like, okay, if you're like that, I guess I can kind of see the pole of Pascal's wager. But like, if you're the kind of agnostic like me who has not it's like no reason on both sides, but like significant reason on both sides, it's much more difficult to do Pascal's wager, at least just psychologically speaking. Like, because I just see so many reasons not to do it. Of course, I see many reasons on the other side, but it's like, they're both two towers, as it were, and it's so hard to like go against one of those towers that has been erected quite high of evidence and reasons and so on, just to act as it were contrary to that. It's just really difficult.
Yeah, no, I was just playing around because I saw you.
I know you're playing around.
Yeah, your interview with Liz Jackson. I watched that, and I've watched her, in other contexts too. It's just my intuitions are just sort of on your side there. It almost just feels weird to me. The pragmatic, like if God exists, like it just seems like God wouldn't want me to do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of different considerations that you could make, but
Yeah,
anyway, I don't
that
get
was a
stuck
fun
on it.
discussion. I just want to say, like, I love Liz. Like, she is such a queen, and she's amazing. So, yeah, I that was a really fun discussion, and I wish I pushed some other objections to Pascal's wager, but we were kind of limited on time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too. You say Jeff Lauder. Like for me, Jeff Lauder was definitely a sort of a gateway drug into more,
yes,
more things. Because I've shared the parts of my story in other places. So I kind of went from Christianity to agnosticism and just kind of dove into. I'm still a novice in regards to philosophy of religion, but Jeff Lauder. I'd read Craig and stuff like that, as a Christian, but Jeff Lauder sort of introduced me to like J.L. Schellenberg and like the other people that I sort of went down that rabbit hole, and so yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, now that you mentioned Craig, I mean, I do want to say for the audience that I like bulldozed over so many complexities and so many things in my story there. Like in the background, yes, I'm reading Craig, I'm reading Phaser, I'm reading all this different. I'm reading both sides. Like I'm listening to what some of the new atheists are saying, and I'm evaluating that. I'm reading about Old Testament atrocities and the debate there. I'm reading about all different sorts of things. So like, yeah, for the audience, don't get the impression that just because I leave out a particular author that they didn't have any impact on me. So yeah, I certainly listened to a lot of Craig, read Craig and other sorts of things, and on the other side as well. So yeah.
I don't know about my audience, but what I'm hearing is you just wanted to sin. So
yeah, basically,
yeah.
I grew up and I was like, you know what? Screw this. I want to go and like date 8 people at the same time. And so I just, ignore all this stuff about like evolutionary animal suffering. Like that's, yeah.
So one of the other things too, as I've listened to your, like you had I might post this in the description as well. You had like an Ask Me Anything for your like 3,000.
Oh yeah.
So I did listen to that. But one of the things you mentioned too that I think is interesting. So you're agnostic. So you don't have to. You can share what you want to share. But like, to what extent is your family know about this? Like, how did this affect Because obviously, it sounds to me like they don't know, and that has to be personally weighing on you in some. So I don't know if you want to talk about that. Whatever you're comfortable talking about that.
I can talk about it. I mean, I can't talk about everything, but let's see. So yeah, let's just start with the environment. So like they're pretty conservative, not like uber, like not like fundamentalist or anything, but like they're pretty conservative, really devout. My family. So I'm the youngest of 4, and so my oldest brother, he's like 30, 31, something like that. Yeah, 30 or 31. I'm 21, just turned 21. So so anyway, I'm the baby in the family, and yeah, all of them are really devout and so on, and it's not really a welcoming environment for like disagreements concerning like religion. I have anxiety, and because a lot of people probably know that. I mean, I tend to speak fast on my videos and so on, but a lot of that is actually a function of my anxiety. I have medicine for it; it helps and so on. But that's just to say that my mom also has anxiety and so on, and so I know that if she were to find out something like that, I don't believe, like she would be really, really anxious about me, my relationship with God, like my eternal destiny and so on. So it would probably psychologically devastate her in some way. I know my dad would try to convert me, and also there might be some aspect, like not complete disownment, but like it would make things really difficult. Like we probably wouldn't be able to see each other on certain religious holidays, just because there's some like not really welcoming aspects there. I mean, they might not. So they're currently helping with some college expenses. I mean, I have to take out student debt and loans and so on, but they're helping with some things, which I'm uber grateful to them, of course. And I'm super privileged in that regard. But, they might threaten to take stuff away, threaten monetary things, threaten I might not be able to like stay at their house. Like, I don't know what would happen. I might not be able to like stay with them because I'm going to take a gap year. I don't know what would happen. Would I have to move out and get an apartment? Like, I don't know. It's just not very welcoming in terms of disagreement. And so what that means is that, everything has been completely in the behind the scenes, like all my research, everything, and which is kind of crazy. And that's going, this is going back to like ninth grade. So I've been doing
reading a Grandma Mobby book under the covers or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's going back to like ninth grade, like I had these sorts of questions. There are a few cases where they, might suspect something, but like, I mean, I'm quite introverted. And It might not seem like that from like YouTube and so on, but like I am in real life. I'm extremely introverted. And so I'm pretty good at keeping things to myself and being private and so on. And yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, since ninth grade, like, you know, I went to the phase of metaphysical naturalism. They, you know, no clue about that. They didn't know that I'm like reading all this other sorts of stuff. They don't know that I'm like debating people at, you know, not like debating in terms of like really like, you know, bashing heads, but, you know, like talking to priests and, you know, talking to teachers after class and like talking to people at the lunch table, like reading all these books and so on, because a lot of them are online or like freely available, or, you know, like YouTube videos, like this is all in the privacy of my own computer and so on. So yeah, almost like all my journey has been just going a solo without sort of you know, family help, as it were, and family knowing about it, which, you know, makes things a little bit difficult. Whenever I'm at home, I have to go to mass with them and so on, and to go through the motions, and I have to pray with them, and yeah, I mean, people might see that as deceptive, but, you know, try to get some empathy, right? Try to see how difficult this is for me. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I try to, I don't know. I would tell them if they weren't so, I don't know, almost hostile to it. If they weren't so, if it weren't a non-welcoming environment. It's not a healthy environment for me. It's not, I mean, for disagreement in that regard. I mean, I love my family and they love me, and we all support each other and love each other and so on. So it's perfectly happy and healthy in that regard. But just in terms of disagreement on religious matters, it's not healthy. So yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should say, yeah, I mean, there is also another aspect of my story that I'm, as we're going on, I'm like forgetting all these different aspects of my story. But like, one major development was also like, I got my first like iPod Touch or some crap in like 4th grade or something, or like, yeah, 4th grade. So what? I'm like 10.
Uh-oh. Can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
It kind of lagged.
Yes.
There we go. We're back.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That's the nature of being on like the 4th floor in my dorm. But yeah, so anyway, I got my like iPod Touch or something in like 4th grade, and you know, I'm like 10 or something, and as one does, I downloaded Instagram because lots of my soccer buddies, I play soccer a ton, so lots of my soccer friends were doing it, so I got an Instagram, and you know, I started like debating people online in different online forums, and it was like, I stress to people, you might be skeptical of this, but it wasn't like antagonistic. Like, it was actually substantive. Like, we would be writing paragraphs upon paragraphs in comment sections, and like we'd be like citing things, and like it was actually kind of like, I kid you not, like it wasn't adversarial. So that kind of also got me in like a super kind of debating mindset. But I don't know, I've been like teasing and toying with arguments ever since a super young age, and I've been exposed to different viewpoints and so on. I remember I used to debate abortion a lot when I was in like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, because that interests me a lot. So, and then, you know, I moved on to debating like creationism versus evolution, and then, you know, moving on to atheism versus theism and so on. And now I just pick fights about the definition of atheism. So no, I'm kidding. But yeah, so that's another element of my story, just the iPod Touch and the Instagram, and like being exposed to different viewpoints, and like being exposed to kind of rigorous argumentation from a really young age. But yeah,
you heard it here first, Christian. Stay away from the internet.
Exactly. Don't get your kid an Instagram. No, do it, because anyway, it'll help them develop and think critically and so on. But anyway, as for the family environment, yeah, it's just not super duper welcoming. And yeah, they know about my book and so on. Like, they know that I publish papers and so on, but like, they're not into like the hardcore philosophy aspects of it. My dad likes apologetics, but you know, it's kind of like basic apologetics, you know, like listen, he's like over 60, and he is he's like a nurse saving people's lives in the burn unit and so on, right? So like, he doesn't have time for delving into the nature and purpose of arguments in Oppie's paper in religious studies, you know. So you know, they don't really have so much time to study like philosophy in depth. So they know that I publish papers, and they have an abstract sense of what I do, but like with respect to papers, but they don't know the particular topics. They can't really, they don't know about the YouTube channel or anything like that. They don't know about the blog. They don't know about any of that. They do know about my book, The Majesty of Reason, but I intentionally made that just like critical thinking sort of oriented. I didn't take stances in there other than like scientism and things like, you know. So yeah, they know about the book, but that's pretty much it, and just a general sense that I publish papers, but they have no clue about YouTube or anything.
Yeah, it would be. I feel like it would be not interesting. Like if you did, if you did end up telling like your dad or something, you said he might try to convert you, but like all this knowledge you have and like him trying to like, convert you, I feel like that would be like you'd be like, please stop. Like
Yeah.
I know you mean well, but like let me let me educate you.
Yeah, it would not be. I mean, yeah, it would. No, I mean it's kind of like if someone. Basically, like a freshman comes into Azusa Pacific University and they're like a new atheist and they've read like 2 Hitchens books and 1 Dawkins books, and then they go to see like Josh Rasmussen and they're like, you believe in God. Let me tell you, it's like Josh is gonna. I mean, Josh will be awesome, amazing with them, but that would be similar to what it's like.
Yeah, that's something else, and I can tell like. And I, with the new atheist stuff, like just your story, what you're describing to me, I could my situation wasn't that bad. Like my brother came out as an atheist first, so he kind of took the brunt of it, when he was in high school.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as bad as like what it sounds like would be if you're not an atheist, but you know what I'm saying, not a Christian.
Yeah.
But I can understand why people get so angry at religion. Like if someone was like in your situation, and then maybe their parents find out or something, and they get all these different consequences follow from that. I can empathetically sort of understand, even though it's like not, there needs to be more nuance and all these other things. But like just the story that you're telling right here, like it's perfectly understandable why people are like, screw this. You know what I mean? Like I don't want anything to do with it. Like not the best reaction, but this is I'm sorry that you have to like deal with that.
Like I mean, people need to realize that like this stuff is I don't know, it gets like really, I mean, we're getting into like psychology and the aspects of, I don't know, just really personal things, and like people, it's understandable for different reactions. I mean, some people are genuinely psychologically harmed by this sort of stuff, and so different reactions make sense. I mean, I have a fairly positive attitude towards religion in general. I mean, just because my environment has probably just shaped me really nicely, really well. I mean, I mean, I'm indebted to my Catholic upbringing. I know a lot about Catholic theology and so on, and I know because I've taken theology classes like every day. I know a lot about various arguments and so on, like apologetics, and I know a lot about and just they're being open to science and they're being open to faith and reason. Like a lot of there's a really good synergy in Catholicism there. So like I don't know, I'm indebted to my religious upbringing for allowing me to appreciate the majesty of reason, essentially.
Right. Yeah. On a lighter note, though, like, why are you so smart? Like, how is this possible? Like,
I don't know. I don't even like to think about that. I mean, I just, I don't know. I have anxiety, so I get kind of obsessive about some things. So, anxiety is a really complex disorder, and it manifests really differently in a lot of different people. For me, I have some obsessive tendencies. I have like incessant thoughts about certain things. I like trip over myself sometimes when I'm thinking and speaking. Like like it's like going too fast sometimes for my own self to keep up with. Just I don't know. I'm like jittery, and
it is impressive. I mean, you're publishing papers. You're still, you know what I mean? Like just at your age, it's really interesting. And I think you said too, like you don't watch TV or anything. Like
well.
You have.
Yeah, I watch YouTube. I mean, I don't like TV and movie. That's just personally.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, another aspect of my story that plays in here is like, listen, when I was like in maybe 2nd grade, and I got my first concussion. It was really bad.
Okay.
I was skating, and this was on my dad. He really shouldn't have let me do this, but I was skating without a helmet, and I think this was one of my first times skating. And I slipped backwards and knocked my head on the ice head first. And it was, anyway, I blacked out. I threw up afterwards. It was really bad. And so that got me really, because then, I went to the concussion doctor, and that got me really interested in like neurology. Because like when you go to the concussion doctor after concussion, trust me, people, I'm going all over the place, but I'll return to our point soon. The concussion doctor does all these really cool things. It's like, okay, can you name the months in reverse order? And then it takes you a certain while, and when you have a concussion, you're like November. You're like doing things wrong. And then he'll like give you numbers, or he'll give you a list of things and you have to like remember it for like 30 seconds. And then you're just doing kind of cool memory games, I thought. So that got me really interested in like neurology and the brain and memory and so on. But yeah, so that got me really cognizant about the mind and the brain, and just how I don't know, how precious and precarious our brains and our minds are. Just like any moment I could be deprived of my brain, my ability to think and so on, just because I've experienced these sorts of concussions. And so that's, I don't know, I feel like I have to use it to the best of my ability. I have to study, I have to do all these sorts of things because it's so precious. It's a precious gift that I could lose at any moment. So let me go on with my concussion story. So that was the first concussion. Second concussion happened in 8th grade. I was playing soccer. So I'm not trying to brag, but I am quite good at soccer. I have some soccer videos on my channel at the end, and people were surprised. They're like, "Whoa, you're pretty good." but anyway, and I'm just shitting around with those sorts of videos. But anyway, I was playing like 2 years up or 1 year up. So I'm like, what, 8th grade? So that's 14. So I'm playing with like 15, 16-year-olds, and so these guys are taller than me and pretty tall and so on. But we were just in practice, and it's really competitive soccer. And I was going up for a header, and another person went up for a header as well and elbowed my temple. And so elbowed my temple, I blacked out, and then I got another concussion. And I went through all the same sorts of dizziness and headaches and nausea. And what's so annoying about concussions is oftentimes you can't think as fast as you want to. You can't think as clearly as you want to. You're just not your normal self. And mentally speaking, you get mentally fuzzy. I don't know how you get sluggish in your mind. It's really difficult. Then in sophomore year, I got another concussion. And this one, how was that one caused? It had something to do with oh my goodness, with soccer. Yeah. So I was on the sidelines. I turned, and a player who was like much heavier than I am just bulldozed into me. And I was like dizzying, or I got another concussion, and this one was devastating. So concussions take different amounts of time to heal, but this one, so a lot of times for people, they take like a month or so or something like that. But this one took 8 months or so, and it was just,
wow.
I don't know, it devastated me. It made high school so difficult. I was sensitive to noise. I was sensitive to light. I couldn't participate in like congregations in school. I had to get special accommodations from teachers. It was annoying for my teachers, and they in turn sometimes made remarks that just ate away at me, because it's like, I'm suffering through this concussion, and the teachers have to do more work with me, right? They have to make the homework less burdensome for me. They have to give me longer time for exams. So, some of the teachers, just when they're having a rough day, maybe they say something like, I'm like, can you print out this exam for me, because I can't take it on the computer. I couldn't look at my computer longer than 10 minutes. And this was like on the span of like months. So, and so a teacher who's not having a good day, and I asked them to print it out, they'd be like, that sort of thing. Like if they let out a sigh, that would just gnaw away at me. I'm like, you don't know how difficult this is for me. And so anyway, it was so difficult, all these concussions and so on. And especially because, at this time I loved reading, I loved thinking, and that took away my ability.
Right, yeah.
I felt like it took away my identity. It took away who I was. It took away my source of fulfillment, my joy. So, I went into certain episodes that you could describe as depressive. It was only temporary for these sorts of things, but I just felt like my whole identity was collapsing because of these concussions. And I'm circling back around, and the circling back around is my point, is just that I've come to recognize how much of a gift ability to think is, ability to reason is. Before my concussions, I took for granted an ability to think quickly, an ability to, do my homework like a normal person, and to read books, and to be able to read on my computer for more than 10 minutes. You take all this stuff for granted, and the concussions, they just mess with me. They mess with my ability to think. They made me not be able to do philosophy as much as I wanted to do, or, all these other sorts of things. And because of that, I had to, I don't know. It's now given me like a flaming desire to make as much use as I can of my brain and my mental abilities and so on, so that I don't know, because so I can like recognize and appreciate that gift. I don't know when I'm going to be deprived of it again. You know, maybe I sometimes go out and play soccer, and you know, maybe a ball will kick my head. I'm really protective now about it. That's another aspect of my anxiety. Yeah, I'm really anxious about my head and so on, just because of all these concussions that I've had. And so like, I don't know when I'm going to be deprived of this again, if I'm going to be. So like, I have to be, I mean, this is where we're going into like, why do I know a lot about philosophy? Well, because I see my brain and my mind as a gift from all these concussion sorts of things that I have to make as best use of it as I can. Like, I don't want to, I don't know. I feel like I'm just wasting my mind if I'm not sort of studying these things in tremendous depth and so on. And I'm not saying other people need to do this as well. I'm talking about my personal journey, people. I know someone who's working a 9 to 5 and then they have to have, you know, another job. Like, I recognize that people have different situations and so on. So, but just for my situation, I don't know. I feel like I always have to constantly be studying and so on, just because of my experience with concussions. So that's another aspect of my story. I know I'm going on a lot, but
no, that's fine. That's good.
I mean, dude, people never get to see this side of me. So
yeah, well, that's what I wanted. Definitely what I wanted to showcase. So, I mean, experience is the best teacher, you know, as they say. So, like, you know, it makes, you know, that's an interesting background, because that makes perfect sense. Like, if you go through that and you kind of internalize, like, my thinking capacity, I've experienced my thinking capacity for months on end, like, taken away.
Yes.
Like, I don't care about, you know, TV right now. I want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that makes sense to me. Like
I don't want to watch a movie for 2 hours, because I do feel like listen, I could be watching like a philosophy YouTube lecture for that, or something. Like, I don't know, you know, I feel like I could be learning or something. Not that I'm always doing that. Like, I do take, obviously I take time to relax and rest and so on, but like, when I do, like, for instance, I try to always just be, you know, reflecting, thinking and so on. So between classes, you know, I'm playing, and this isn't just me, you know, a lot of people do this, but like, I'm playing an audiobook or something. Like, there's the Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview on Audible. So like, I'm listening to that, or like when I'm running, I'll be listening to that, and I'll be like cursing in my head because of their kalam, and I'm getting frustrated because they're using Hilbert's Hotel or something, because I get triggered at that. But no, but yeah, like when I'm doing laundry, I'm listening to like some sort of philosophy lecture. When I'm like walking between classes, when I'm playing, you know, sometimes I do things like relaxing, like I might play some Xbox. But when I'm doing that, I'm playing like a Kane B video in the background, right? You know, so like I'm listening to philosophy of science or something. Like, I'm always trying to do that. Yeah, like, or like when I'm eating and so on. So yeah, I just recognize it as a gift, and that I don't want to waste. So
when if you play online video games, do people hear in the background you trash talking and then Kane B like in the background, like, getting really confused, like they just got owned by
yeah, no, yeah, I don't tend to go on the mic or anything, but that's pretty funny. Yeah, I play like I used to play FIFA a lot, and my concussions kind of disrupted that. But, you know, every now and then I sort of get on it, like when I'm at home. I don't have time during the school year because I'm doing homework and so on. But yeah, and I'll also play first-person shooter games. So like Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare, and these sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you too, because you're so interested in all these philosophical topics, is, are there any areas or disciplines within philosophy or topics that actually bore you?
Yeah.
Like, so I want to know about those. Like, what do you like? What kind of philosophy do you read and you're like, I don't care about this. Like, I don't care. I have no time for it. Like what's?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. So there are lots of different areas of that, but I'm gonna trigger some people.
You have a lot. I mean, tell me.
Yeah. So like a lot of aspects. So okay. So philosophy of language is really important. Like, I would say all analytic philosophers need to know the basic conceptual terrain of philosophy of language. Like, you need to know what a rigid designator is, what non-rigid designation is. You need to know like these sorts of things, or like a definite description versus a proper name versus like all these other sorts. Like, you need to know that. But when you get into like the nitty gritty of philosophy of language, it is atrocious, man. It's so terrible. It's so boring. Like, they're talking about, oh my goodness, like it's just terrible. So anyway, I find aspects of philosophy of language super boring. I just, I don't know. I care about the nature of reality, man. And like, I want, that's why I'm interested in like philosophy of religion and all these other sorts of things. Like that's why I'm starting to like really not enjoy other academic things that would be seen as academic pursuits that I don't really see as facilitating insights about the fundamental nature of reality. So it's like sometimes in my biology classes, because I have a biology minor, just because I'm really interested in evolutionary biology. If I could change that, I would go back and do like a math minor because I do like math. But anyway, bad decision for biology minor, but you know, I only have like 1 or 2 more classes. Anyway, I have to like memorize the parts of a plant and it's terrible, man. I hate it. I feel like I'm being tortured when I have to memorize like the pistil and the stamen or whatever, and like these certain aspects of the plant. And I'm like, this is xylem and phloem. It's terrible, man. Anyway, I feel like I'm like wasting my brain resources when I'm doing that. So anyway, that's because I feel like it's not about the fundamental nature of reality. I want to know about like what reality is like fundamentally. I don't care about how plants have sex. Like I don't care. But anyway. Yeah, but okay, so back to philosophy of language. Yeah, I find that kind of boring. What other things do I find boring? Okay, so this is a person-specific thing, but I'm not interested in philosophy of race and gender and so on. I recognize that that stuff is important. I think that that stuff is important for, especially for certain social problems. And, you know, there's definitely prejudice against people of different groups that needs to be combated. And yeah, I agree with that. But I myself find it intolerably boring to think about like, oh, what is gender and how is it expressed and like, or like social phenomena. You know, like, I don't really care, man. I'm sorry. Like, I want to know about whether God exists or like what's time like. You know, these like out there like fundamental features of reality. Like, I don't really care, personally speaking, about like the nuances of gender and race and so on. I recognize that stuff is important, so I'm not belittling people who go into that. So yeah, philosophy of race, gender, that's another one. Philosophy of language, let's see. I mean, pretty much philosophy of blank were, so like philosophy of plants, I'm guessing I wouldn't like that. But yeah, I think that's kind of, those are the main ones that come to mind immediately. I mean, some aspects of epistemology, I don't find terribly interesting, like listen, knowledge, I mean, we're not going to be able to get an analysis of knowledge. Like, get over it, okay? Like, that's kind of boring when you're like going through all these different analyses of knowledge and you're like finding all these different potential counterexamples that are like really weird. And sometimes that gets boring. When it comes to epistemology, I'm actually kind of interested in like more social epistemology aspects, like peer disagreement. Like, that stuff is interesting to me because that's like, how do I update my beliefs given that this really smart person over here who's studied a lot disagrees with me? Because that I don't know. I'm interested in things that bear on my beliefs about the fundamental nature of reality. So that's kind of like epistemology, as well as investigating the fundamental nature of reality. So
yeah, I think I got some companion to social social epistemology. I think it was like the Routledge companion. I don't know. Something came out recently. I downloaded it because I think that's interesting too. I haven't read it yet, but you know, the whole idea of like trusting authorities, like
yeah, that stuff is interesting.
Yeah, like so I don't know a ton about that, but it's definitely an interesting topic. But
Yeah.
One of the things I do like, because you're so interested in the nature of like fundamental reality, and that, you know, I can tell that by like listening to your videos and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like you get the impressions dropped in.
Oh yeah, those
or like you like make yourself laugh because you say like pee pee.
Yeah.
Like, and like I don't remember what it was. I don't know if I'm butchering the example.
Inert pee-pee. I remember an inert pee-pee.
That was what it was.
Because I was using some sort of like I don't know, predication principle. So I use like abbreviations, and so I might predication principle pee-pee, and I was like, oh well, the predication principle doesn't apply here. We have an inert pee-pee, and I start laughing.
I was like, I remember I was like cooking dinner and like I was listening to it and I like burst out laughing because it's so fun. I don't know, because it's just like the duality of man. Like you're talking about like all this really high level stuff, and then I just hear like, that is to say, like, I'm not going to try to do it, but it's funny. I like it. So
yeah, I try. Okay, I do want to say, like, I try to, especially in my like more recent videos, I'm trying to sprint, because I get like really deep into like the unsatisfiable paradiagnosis, and we have a non-well-founded set, which is such that some property or condition P holds at a given member if and only if it holds nowhere earlier along the ordering relation. You know, like I'm doing that, but I also want to like make it funny at some point. So, I'll put in a Zizek impression, like I'll put in a Swinburne impression, I'll put in some sort of joke, like inappropriate joke or something. In one of my videos, I started singing "Let's Talk About Sex, Baby" near the end of it. That was actually, that was my most recent video was near the end. I started talking because I was like, I'm not talking about grounding. I'm talking about causation. And so then I started like singing. I'm talking about sex. Anyway, so I try to make them engaging for the audience, and I'll put in really stupid things like that just because I enjoy it and I think the audience will enjoy it. And yeah.
Well, we enjoy it. We enjoy it.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been like on YouTube? So you've started doing all these YouTube videos. You do all these other stuff. You do like academic stuff, but then you have the YouTube channel. So like, what is your general experience? I mean, there's a guy that reached out to me. His name was Canadian Catholic.
Oh gosh.
Actually, he truly did reach out. He truly did reach out to me, and like I like Googled him, and I found your thing. I didn't even watch. I literally watched like I was like, nope. I like put it like I immediately deleted the email. I'm like, no thank you.
Dude, someone, I don't know this channel, but it was like Curb Your Polemics. I don't know if you saw that, but like this, everyone in the audience, well, I'm not sure if I should be endorsing this kind of content, but I'm just going to recommend that people form their own opinions on this particular video, and you should go and check it out as well. But it's something, just search Curb Your Polemics, like Joe Schmid versus Canadian Catholic or something like that. And it's like, it's the highlights of our discussion. And it's only 8 minutes long.
Okay.
And I thought it was funny.
I might have seen someone share that, but I almost like I didn't even click on it because I was like, I watched enough to know. I was just like, this is, I don't know. Didn't Ben Watkins go on his channel too? I think he did. I think he was like, I didn't research this enough. Like this was a terrible.
That was my mistake. I didn't research. Yeah, when you email me when I'm in school, sometimes like I'm doing homework, I see an email pop up on my phone, and I quickly respond to it. Like, I'm not going to be doing research. Like if he reached out to me in maybe like a different time when I had more time on my hands, I might have researched his content and seen what was going on. But I fell into the trap of not doing that. So.
Well, I kind of had a red flag because I feel like the email was like, it was like urgent debate opportunity. Like it was some stupid. So I was like immediately suspicious. I was like, who is this? Like this looks like spam. Like
yeah, I have some. I don't. How should I say? Not very positive hypotheses about psychological manipulation, because in the emails that I get from him, it's like all caps, important, or like urgent, like action needed, or things like that. I'm like, okay. Anyway,
that's how people like scam people. That's the same tactics that they use. Like,
yeah,
you need to click on this link now, or you're going to jail.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to speculate. We're not speculating on motivations or anything, but it's just an interesting experience. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Anyway, I had to bring that up. So you have like
Oh yeah, you asked about my experience on YouTube. Okay,
yeah,
so yeah, I was one of those COVID channels. I started in, I believe, April of 2020. So that's like really close to when Purdue called off in-person classes and we all had to like move home abruptly. So I had, because professors didn't, no one knew what was going on. So like this is the very closer to the beginning of the pandemic. So like our professors, a lot of them were like, okay, you just do one thing this week and then the next week and we're just going to call it a quit, like something like that. Because like, professors themselves, they have kids and children, like they have to work out their situation. Like everyone, it was like exploding. Everything was on fire. So like no, we didn't really have much homework to do and so on. Mm-hmm. So like I had more time and I'm like, listen, I mean, I'm just finishing up this book. I could make a YouTube channel. I already had my blog. And I just knew that I could like serve people with content that I have in my own sort of repositories on Google Documents and so on. Like I make stuff like that for myself. I do research for myself and keep them in repositories like that. Why not share the goodies, share the love. So I figured, screw it. Let's make a channel and started. And yeah, we've been going ever since. I really enjoy it. For the most part, I really enjoy it. I like making these videos. I think I've gotten lots of emails that just make my day, and things like that. They're people just genuinely being served by my content and saying that they appreciate it, that they learn from it. I've had professors contact me and say that they've used some of my stuff.
Wow.
I've had grad students say that they've like some people put some of my stuff for like recommended listening or like additional resources for their syllabi or syllabuses or whatever, and
right.
Like how grad students oftentimes have like informal get-togethers where they talk about topics. I've had some people say that they use those in there. Some of the philosophy club here at Purdue, one of them likes my channel, and so they sometimes like use it in there. So like, I don't know, I've just had a lot of positive. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, people. I'm just saying that like I've really enjoyed it because I've seen that my goal for the channel have been fulfilled for a lot of different people. And my goal is to serve people, to help them think critically about the fundamental nature of reality. Like I say in some of my most recent videos, like, listen, like the conclusions that I come to in my videos are they're kind of secondary importance. I mainly want people to be able to understand these sorts of things, to be able to think critically about the issues, whether or not they come to my conclusions. I mean, I think the conclusions that I come to in my videos are correct. And so I'd like other people to share that. But more important to me, right? More important to me is that they develop the intellectual virtues that I'm trying to stress, that I'm trying to get people to develop and cultivate. And also that they see and recognize and learn how to sort of evaluate an argument, to critically think about it, to tease apart certain aspects of a dialectical context and see what an undercutting defeater is and see what a rebutting defeater is. So yeah, that's much more important to me than the particular conclusions and even topics of my channel. Just the ability of people to think critically about these sorts of things, because those are transferable skills to any context, including like philosophical topics that are utterly tangential to the ones that I explore on my channel. So anyway, I've had a really positive experience. I enjoy making the videos. I enjoy putting in little crazy, stupid stuff like that, my impressions and so on. I enjoy doing, for instance, that book tour. I did like the Mario. It's like, it's a me, Mario, and like other sorts of really stupid things in there. And I enjoy that, you know. I kind of have like a stupid and absurd sense of humor, so like I'll use that. And and I've learned things myself. So that's also another really cool thing. Like when I had Josh Rasmussen and Alex Malpass on my channel talk, for instance, about Benedetti paradoxes and things like that, you know, like I'm learning myself as well as I go through these things. And like people don't realize that this is cutting edge. Well, a lot of people do, but some people don't realize that this is cutting edge scholarly stuff. Like this stuff is at like the very edge of recent debates. Like they're like Josh and Alex, they're talking about aspects that they're like working on in like unpublished papers and so on. And like, so we are at the forefront, and that stuff is being put out online for free for people to watch. Yeah. It's like, it's so interesting. I myself have used things that I've learned through different discussions with some of my people in some of my papers, and I've incorporated that. Like I was just telling Josh the other day, like in our discussion with Alex Malpass, there was a point about the nature of arguments, about like the nature of arguments and dialectical contexts and people who are antecedently accepting the possibility of infinites and, you know, other sorts of things. Like I incorporated some of the stuff that we talked about in that video into one of my recently accepted papers. And so it's like, it's so interesting how I myself am learning from this, and it's at the cutting edge of debates. Yeah. So anyway, I find it super fun, super fascinating. And for the most part, I'm enjoying it. There are aspects that I don't enjoy. I hate editing. You can probably imagine that. I mean, that's another one of those things where it's like, I feel like I'm not using my cognitive resources as best as I can if I'm editing, but I usually try to put like some sort of podcast on the background when I'm editing or something like that. Or I outsource it. I outsource it to someone else. But yeah, I'm enjoying that. Not enjoying that, excuse me, editing. And some of the comments are really cringe and stupid. And so,
Ed Phaser's way smarter than you. He owns you.
Yeah, dude, his blog post responses were something else. Anyway, I just advise people to check out my blog post responses because he demonstrably misrepresented, like to the point where I could like show my article and what I actually said and then what Phaser said I said, and it's just demonstrable misrepresentation. But setting that aside, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, so some comments are really cringe, and some like responses are really cringe as well, and I feel like I have to respond to them. And that's part of my anxiety, so it's hard for me to constrain myself sometimes, or restrain myself. So yeah.
You should just, when you get a trolling comment, you should just put "cry" underneath, and that's your response. Like,
yeah.
That's just. I mean, I know that's not your. You just like to be nice, but I have too much fun with social media, so I troll back sometimes. But
yeah, I mean that's another thing. Like social media is really, really painful. I have one of my friends from Guarded Acumen. I have him run a lot of my social media stuff. So like I have a Twitter account, sort of. I don't use it. I think I just went on yesterday to share one of my articles. I think that's all that I did. But I am never on my Instagram or my like Majesty of Reason Twitter page or Instagram or Facebook. I mean, people go follow it because it's updates, and my friend uses the channel or uses the account, but that's not me that you're interacting with. So, but I do use my own personal like Joe Schmid Facebook profile. That's what I only try to limit my social media to that because I don't like social media. It's really stressful and it's painful and it's cringe. It's so cringe, but yeah.
No, I do want to say that I do appreciate your channel though, because I'm one of the people that works, so I don't have as much time to read as I want. And so a lot of times I'll get home and like start cooking dinner and I'll have like my headphones on and I'll be listening to Majesty of Reason or something. So I'm getting, as someone who's getting more and more into philosophy of religion, it's nice to be able to like listen to this kind of stuff rather than I don't have time, or sometimes like I don't have the mental energy to like sit down and read. I'm
like take out an Oppie book.
Yeah. I might be like listening to, an interview with the scholars, like a more informal interview rather than like listening, reading Oppie talk about the ontological argument or something like that. But like, so it's kind of nice to just sort of have it on in the background while I'm doing different things. So I appreciate your channel for that reason too, because it has served me. So I hope
that's wonderful.
Check it out as well.
That's amazing. It brings me so much joy to hear that from people, and I tell them that as well. So I like to stress that. And like, I myself sometimes, I sometimes don't have time to like, sit down and like read an entire book or something. But if someone's done like an interview on it, I can kind of get an idea of what they're saying in the book. And so I can decide whether or not to allocate resources to that. Like, I don't know. I just find it really good and really helpful. I mean, sometimes I'm really technical in my videos, and so I apologize to people for that. But, it's one of the only, well, there are a lot of different channels, and they all have, different channels have different purposes and so on. Mm-hmm. My channel is indeed intended to be that kind of technical. You're going to get some like well-researched stuff, and you're going to get like scholarly citations and so on. And so I recognize that that's not going to float everyone's boat, but for the people it does, like that's who I'm trying to serve, So some of my videos I try to make it like accessible, but sometimes it's hard. So I apologize to some people for that, but yeah.
I mean, it serves the purpose that it needs to serve.
Yeah.
But it seems like too, like you're having a hand in helping out to popularize some of these ideas too, because you recently, I guess you and Rationality Rules were in conversation with the, his and Cameron's debate, and I watched that stream where you guys all talked, and it seemed like you're really pleased with some of these ideas starting to come out in the broader YouTube arena.
Exactly.
Or at least being popularized in a different way. So I don't know if you want to. I'm sure you're happy about that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I've also been like, I've been able to popularize my own research and content and so on. Like, listen, most researchers, most philosophers, their papers are read by 3 people. Number 1, their mom, and number 2, them, and number 3, like maybe their supervisor or some of their other close buddies. Like, that's basically it. But like, if you're going on YouTube, like if you go on Capturing Christianity for an interview, like you're reaching thousands of people, like with your ideas and your research and so on, like, and same with like my channel. So it's like so much more exposure, and you can be much more, you can have much more impact with your research, with your ideas, with other people's research and so on, just by going online, talking about it on YouTube channels and so on. So it's like, it's a way to condense your research, to convey it to a popular audience, to maybe, make it as slightly less technical as much as you can, and get people thinking about it, get people talking about it. Like I said in the discussion that you were referencing, I would never have thought that, people on the internet, on YouTube would be like citing, oh, well, Alexander Proust says in page 52, actually, right. And like, well, Oppie actually wrote a review of that paper published here, and here's what he said. Like that stuff is like, it's so beautiful, isn't it? It's just wonderful. And like I would have never thought that we'd reach that kind of high level of discourse, which is what I'm all about. So yeah, I see it as a really good and a positive trend, and I want to contribute to that. So
yeah, it does seem like Alex O'Connor and Rationality Rules, like it seems like there is a trend of even some of the more popular people that started out a certain way are starting to kind of think through, not that they're changing their positions, but that they're even though they're popularizing certain kinds of content, thinking about it in a different way, in a more rigorous way. So I think that's really good.
Stephen himself from Rationality Rules, just sorry to interrupt, but like he himself has told me that like he also is really starting, not that he's like completely ignored it before, but he's really starting to like delve into like the philosophical literature and all these different sorts of things. And like he's actually he's like reading papers before he makes videos now and so on, and he's like asking me for recommendations on what sorts of sources he can read for a given topic. And like we're doing a Kalam series, and it's gonna be such a fun series because we're like bringing the best of the scholarship. Like it's gonna be so epic going forward in our next videos about the Hilbert's Hotel and all these other sorts of things. But anyway, my point is just like, yeah, that you can see it in like Cosmic Skeptic. Like he's now bringing on Stephen Law and like other sorts of things, and he's like citing Peter Van Inwagen in his videos now, and same with like Rationality Rules, and it's just great. It's wonderful.
Stephen Law, I love Stephen Law. I reached out to him, so I should in the coming months. I think I'm gonna have him on.
Nice.
He's very busy, but
oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So as we're nearing the end, I do have to ask the obligatory question: what are the best arguments for theism and against theism, on your view? And it sounds like against would probably be some form of like Draper style argument from evil. I don't know if you want to elaborate, but like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh boy. So there are so many different arguments on both sides. So many different considerations. I think probably
I gotta ask the agnostic. I mean, you're in the middle, so I gotta, I'm sure you'll have a good answer to this question.
Yeah. I mean, so on the theist side, I mean, it's probably something along the lines of contingency type arguments that Proust and Rasmussen develop in their book Necessary Existence. I myself am still caught up on the gap problem. I think it's a very serious problem, and it's really difficult to bridge that gap from necessary foundation to God. But that's not to say that it can't be done. And but anyway, so yeah, probably contingency type arguments. And I also kind of like an argument from conscious moral agency. So it seems as though there's tremendous value in there being conscious moral agents, that can facilitate relationships with one another, loving relationships with God, and so on. So I think there's just profound value in conscious moral agents. And so that gives us some weight of expectation to think that a perfect being would produce a world in which there are conscious moral agents who can freely give gifts of love to one another and to God. And so I think that, there's some degree of expectation there. It's not extremely surprising under theism that there would be such creatures. But under naturalism, it seems much more surprising than it is on theism that there are such creatures. I mean, it seems for instance, for moral agency, you have to have a kind of irreducible causal power that I don't see how anything like a naturalistic foundation could have a kind of directedness toward. Like you have to have a sensitivity to reasons. You have to have just a certain kind of volitional power over your actions. And consciousness, that's not really, I mean, Draper, for instance, has said if consciousness isn't evidence for theism, he doesn't know what evidence is. So like, but like, I just think conscious moral agency, it's very surprising under naturalism. And you just have to get over so many probability hurdles that relate to like the evolutionary process, and you have to have a sufficiently complex brain. You have to have sufficiently elegant and harmonious laws to allow certain developmental patterns to occur. There's just a lot of probability hurdles. So those are probably my two answers for theism: contingency type arguments, and then a Bayesian argument from conscious moral agency. And then for naturalism, definitely an evolutionary argument. Probably, I would just run it probably in Bayesian terms. Bayesian evolutionary argument from evil. To me, it's extremely surprising under theism that a fully providential, omnibenevolent God would orchestrate this kind of bloodbath as the very means or mechanism by which creation is brought about. Like humans and other sorts of sentient beings are brought about. Like, what kind of process? Anyway, it's just very surprising to me. I'm not saying it's incompatible. Those kind of inconsistency arguments are really hard to defend, but on both sides, whether for or against God's existence. But it does seem just extremely surprising. These are mere moral patients, right? They're not moral agents, and so it doesn't seem as though a pig would be like, oh yeah, so I just experienced this suffering over here, and so and so I'm going to develop my character in such a way. It's like, no, the pig is just, it's a pig, and so it just suffers. So anyway, it's rough. It's rough when you think about that. And just the profound, like, think of how protracted it is, like hundreds of millions of years of these non-human animal suffering. It's like, this is the very means by which a providential God orchestrated it. It's really surprising to my mind on theism. By contrast, it doesn't seem nearly as surprising on a view where fundamental reality is just indifferent to the flourishing and languishing of creatures. Fundamental reality doesn't give a damn whether the pig is suffering really, or whether there's this protracted process. It just seems much more fitting in a worldview where there isn't such providential governance and direction from an omnibenevolent being. So yeah, that's probably the best argument for atheism by my lights. I mean, there are some other interesting arguments that I'm starting to toy with. So it's like, there are different models of divine providence, So, they've got Molinism, open theism, simple foreknowledge. You've got theological determinism. But like each of these has some like really serious problems to the point where you start to wonder whether or not there could be a fully provident being. Now, a lot of theists aren't going to like that argument, but I think that's an interesting one that I'm starting to think about. Just all the profound difficulties for like Molinism and simple foreknowledge, all these different sorts of views. And then another one would just be, this one is another one that would be hated by most theists, but you could adduce independent arguments against divine simplicity. So divine simplicity I find quite implausible for a variety of different reasons that I've articulated on my channel and elsewhere. So like if you could argue against divine simplicity, but then like you could also say, okay, well, if God's not simple, well, then God would have to be complex. But then like you can use some of the arguments that proponents of divine simplicity use against these other models and just use those against them. So it's almost like if God exists, he's either simple or non-simple, but it can't be simple for such and such reasons. And you got your list of like 13 billion. And then, and then this other one, if he's non-simple, well, then you've got these other problems, wouldn't it seem as though God's existence is in some sense due to his parts, or, so he wouldn't be fully ultimate or independent, anyway, the reasons there are really complex. But my point is just that I think that's another interesting argument that I kind of want to try to see if I can develop further, just this kind of disjunctive argument where either divine simplicity or divine complexity, as it were, but both of those suffer some really serious challenges. So that's one argument that I'm thinking about. But then for agnosticism distinctively, the complexity of the evidence and so on, like it's so complex. Like when I think about maybe people who aren't steeped in the literature, like they might not see this, but like whenever I think about even a given argument, I know that there are like probably thousands of papers that I haven't read that are published by people who are like much more well read and like smarter and so on than I am, and that if I were to read them, they'd have some impact on my evidential assessment, and that's the case on both sides. So it's like if I know that, how can I be like super confident on one side or the other? Like that seems epistemically vicious to me. I don't know. So that kind of agnosticism, I think that pushes the boundaries of agnosticism. It's like just the sheer complexity of the evidence and the sheer complexity of the issues, and just how much is written on both sides by people who know what they're talking about, and that you as in the universal you, that you haven't researched. So that's something that pushes me towards agnosticism. But yeah, anyway, that's a rough sketch for the audience, and I'm doing this totally extemporaneously. So don't blame me for cursory treatments.
Yeah, you could almost turn that like into a hiddenness argument, like the complexity of. I think Schellenberg has said elsewhere, like maybe the complexity of all of this might count as evidence for atheism or something. I don't know if not everyone agrees with him about that, but
I mean, it could be.
Depends on how you conceive of hiddenness and like how God relates to the world and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I tend to think that people who are seekers, who are like just seeking the truth and seeking beauty and goodness and so on, are already in an implicit relationship with God. So if God exists, so I would. Anyway, lots of complexities there, which is like illustrating the point.
So I think a good place to end would be, so do you have any upcoming plans for your work, whether on YouTube or like, I don't know, whatever you can share on YouTube or like you publish papers and books?
Yeah. So my EJPR paper on the Neoplatonic proof. So Phaser has this argument from composition for God's existence, and I don't think it works. I already made a video on my channel about it because I made that once the article was accepted, but it's not out yet, but it's going to be coming out pretty soon. So people stay tuned for that. It's in European Journal for Philosophy of Religion. So that should be coming out sometime soon. Just yesterday was published online my article on a step-by-step argument for causal finitism. So you could check out my blog. I have a preprint version there. You guys can check that out. Let's see. I've got a book manuscript under review right now at different presses. So that's called Existential Inertia and Classical Theistic Proofs. So I go through a bunch of different arguments for classical theism, including all of Phaser's and including the Dante argument from essence, existence, distinction. And I also give kind of like the first systematic, like book-length treatment of existential inertia, addressing all the objections in the literature and developing certain metaphysical accounts of it and talking about how it relates to relativity theory and other sorts of things. Really complex but fun stuff. So yeah, people can keep their eyes peeled for that, but the process takes forever, especially for books. Oh my goodness. So don't get your hopes up for anything soon, but it's under review. So that's a good sign. As for my channel, I hope to make a little summary video sometime soon of Linda Zagzebski's paper, Omniscience, Time, and Freedom, or something like that. So that'll be fun. And I also am having Elephant Philosophy on for an ontological argument video. So that'll be out maybe in a couple weeks or something like that. And then probably next week will be uploaded a video on hypertime. So, we've got our own temporal dimension, but maybe there is another temporal dimension in which our temporal dimension is embedded, and that would be hypertime. And that gets really interesting because it might help with the problem of evil. It might make it worse. It might help with it. But we'll see. So, well, I've already interviewed the two scholars. It's Dr. Sam Liebens. So he's a Jewish scholar, philosopher of religion, philosopher of time, and Ryan Mullins. So, yeah, people know him. Yeah. So it's a really fun discussion on philosophy of time, philosophy of hypertime. So, yeah, that's the upcoming stuff.
Yeah. I was hoping for more like Trent Horn destroyed.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude, I love I seriously, I say it at the beginning of my videos. Like I do love Trent Horn, and we are thinking about different ways to proceed with our disagreement further. Like we might write a book. Like who knows? We'll see. We're in talks about that. But cool. I do recommend people check out my responses to it because I talk about like the argument from change. I talk about the Kalam, different Benerdetti paradoxes, the paper passer or Grim Reaper paradox. I talk about the moral argument. I haven't gone much about the moral argument on my channel except for some of these recent videos on Trent Horn. So go into that. I don't think the moral argument works. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This was really interesting. I'm going to end the broadcast now. We can talk a little bit afterwards. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.